Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. I was just thinking, this is my third Halloween as an artist. I began my art career on August 28, 2022. Never forget that day. It started innocently enough, actually. A few weeks earlier, I was tutoring a AP chemistry student. He had this fancy periodic table that had a history of the elements, how rare they were, some information about what it's used in, and all that. But I was most fascinated by the rarity of the elements because I was about to show my student why gold is being overbought, and how cheap silver and platinum especially are relative to their rarity. I was just about to show my student that stuff. He was 16, 17 years old, and I think he was starting his first job soon. I was showing him what he can invest in because gold is so overbought compared to these other elements. I was going to suggest silver and platinum, especially silver, because you don't need a whole lot of money to get involved in that, right? And I was just about to show him when I realized that bismuth is even rarer. I didn't know how much bismuth was going for. I had never bought it at the time, but I noticed on his periodic table, according to the numbers, it was only twice as common as gold. And I knew it was a lot cheaper than gold because I knew people had made bismuth crystals, right? And but I still didn't know how much until I went home to do some reading about it. But I was showing my student platinum and maybe some bismuth, right? And silver, right? And then I went home and realized how cheap it was. I was thinking it was on the order of silver. I really was. It wasn't until I got home did I realize that it's on the order of more like copper or nickel, right? And so I bought some. I wasn't thinking I was going to make art with it. I was buying it as an investment, just like somebody might buy silver, gold, or platinum. And I bought 10 pounds, if I remember correctly. And a few days later, the 10 pounds of bismuth came at my door. And I still haven't thought about making art out of it. It was a rare metal, and I was going to get rich on it someday, or at least hedge my bets, right? Because you know, it only cost me what, 80, $90, and there was a chance that it was going to be worth a fortune someday. People spend 80, $90 on the lottery all the time with much lesser chance, much, much, much lesser. There's probably a better chance that the 10 pounds of bismuth are going to make me rich someday than a lottery ticket, right? And so I kind of went in with that kind of sentiment. I didn't go in with the idea that one day 15% of my net worth is going to be bismuth, right? I really never crossed my mind. Never did it cross my mind that it was going to be a big part of my career either. In fact, I took the bismuth bar to the tutoring center where I was working so that I could use them as gym weights because I was sitting at my desk multiple hours every day, was kind of getting unhealthy. And I even showed the student, he thought it was platinum because I had been recommending platinum the week before. I was like, do you think I would be still teaching here if this 10-pound bar were solid platinum? And and he thought it was maybe silver. And I told him it was bismuth. And he laughed at me. And he said, seriously? You think just because the metal is rare? I mean, why not? It's rare and you could buy it so cheaply. I mean, I just treat it like it's a $90 lottery ticket, right? I probably have a better chance of winning this ticket than any other $90 lottery ticket in the world, right? And he was like, good point. So that was that, and I used it as gym weights, and plus I can use them as gym weights, right? And then a couple days later, I did some more reading into it, and I discovered that I could make crystals out of it. My first batch didn't go too well. I pulled a few crystals out of it. It also messed up a lot of my bismuth, or I turned it into oxide, but I kept it because I knew there were processes to turn it back into metal. And I poured a few Halloween things out. That's why Halloween sticks out. It was getting close to Halloween. I had bought a silicone mold tray from Safeway to pour tombstones and all that. And then I pulled out a few crystals. And then I ended up with a jar of slag, which I eventually recovered the bismuth from. That was my first batch. It was nothing spectacular, but it was a good start. And not long after that, I moved to Phoenix, and that's when I went crazy over the bismuth. I had gotten what has now become my favorite pour, a silicone mold of a Ganesh that, if poured out of bismuth, weighs about 5-6 pounds. And I have over 100 of them, and I've sold quite a few of them too. So I probably poured more like 150 of them altogether in my career. It's my favorite pour. Every time I need to, part of the reason it's my favorite pour is when I buy bismuth, they always come in bars that are like 15 pounds, 20 pounds a piece, right? It's very hard to pour smaller things with them. So what I usually do is I melt the 15 or 20 pounds of bismuth and pour one or two of those large Ganeshes. And then what's left over, it's a lot easier to pour smaller things out of, right? That's why I end up with a lot of those signature large Ganeshes, which I love anyway. And so, what else have I? And then I started doing these. This is another. So I got two of these frames of 4-leaf clovers now. I hope to. Everybody's talking about the federal budget crisis and the $1 trillion coin. I hope to design a $1 trillion coin to pour out of bismuth. I don't know why everybody fixates on the coin being made of platinum, though. Every time the concept of $1 trillion, technically, as long as it's not gold or silver, the feds can put any number on it, right? So it might as well be something exotic like bismuth or indium or even tellurium, and put $1 trillion. You know what they could also do? Instead of just making $1 trillion coin out of bismuth, they could just keep minting $1 trillion coins and spending them until an ounce of bismuth is actually worth $1 trillion, and then we can go back to hard currency again, right? That would be one. That would actually save the economy, right? Of course, then they'll have to rein in their spending because then we'll have hard currency at that point, right? That's not a bad idea. I could kickstart that idea by pouring some $1 trillion bismuth coins, right? Anyway, continue to pray for my art career. I tried another kind of foil paper, and then I eventually moved on to the Mondrian squares. I tried another kind of foil paper for my Mondrian squares today. Unfortunately, the paper is a little bit more translucent than I had hoped, and as a result, you can kind of see the glue marks below it. What else have I been doing? Here's another Mondrian square made of the foil paper. And I hope to finally submit some ideas to LEGO. So this one's almost ready to submit. We got the Palace of Science and Culture. Feel free to leave some suggestions if anything comes up. I just think the color's a little bit off. I'll probably have to experiment. I'll probably take some pictures and then do some photoshopping to see how best to make the colors of everything. But I'm very pleased at how it turned out. And then the Twin Towers in New York. Oh, what happened to my antenna? Oh, this piece was on the antenna. Wrong place. Never mind. I'll fix that later. That's to scale, believe it or not, the Twin Towers. This one I'm not so sure. I kind of went by how many floors these sections had and kind of just worked out the ratios as close as I could to scale. I'll be submitting to LEGO Ideas in the near future. Please continue to pray that works out. Continue to pray for me by leaving a dislike on this I can't believe it all started. It all started because my student, I was working at a pretty toxic job as well. And the art career, it all started because my student decided to bring in a fancy periodic table. It just goes to show how chaotic our life and career paths could be, right? One little decision, had he forgotten to bring that periodic table that he loved to the campus, or had I had I been a little bit more focused in telling him about the platinum and didn't pay attention to the number for bismuth, had I been absent that day, had he caught COVID or I had caught COVID that day, our trajectories would have been very different, right? It just goes to show how a little detail, right? So you can never discount little details, right? I always wondered, right? Speaking of my latest Lego pieces, have you ever wondered? Think back to 2001. Maybe you decided to buy a car, or my dad bought a Mazda Tribute that year, or what you decided to wear in terms of clothes to work in early September. Imagine if one little detail of a choice you made could have prevented 9/11 from happening. I always wonder how you would go about proving. There's no proof, right? That had my dad not bought that Mazda Tribute, that everything that he bought it in August of 2001, there's no proof that everything would have played out the same way, right? There's a pretty high probability, I would argue, but there's no proof, right? There's no proof that had you decided to wear a different piece of clothing to work on Monday, September 10th of 2001, that the next day would have played out the same way. There's no proof. There is none. And it really bothers me that I don't know. I wonder if there's a name for this concept. It really bothers me, right? Just like had my student decided to not bring his fancy periodic table to tutoring that day, my life would be very different today than it is currently, right? Just goes to show, right? It's so weird, right? This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.